Hello everyone, welcome back to the journey to National Master. This episode I will show you round 4 of Open Internacional Marquês de Pombal. This round I got paired up against Andrea Gori, Italian player who lives in Portugal, rated 1979, so pretty high rated compared to me. I had the black pieces. My opponent started with d4. I didn't really have deep preparation for this game because my opponent pretty much played everything under the sun, so I was just you know expecting everything. So okay, my opponent starts with d4, I go d5, he goes bishop f4, so the London system. Yeah, I don't really like playing against the London system, to be honest. I just yeah, it just pisses me off a little bit, but I have to find a setup that I like against it. So I go c5, which is one of my favorite setups for sure. He goes e3, I go knight c6, and here he goes for knight c3. So bro thinks he's Richardini or something like that. Bro thinks is me. No, jokes aside, knight c3, I wasn't really expecting this move order for the Jobava, but it's fine probably. Here I took on d4, he took back with the e pawns, pretty standard, and here I played bishop f5. So I was already very happy with this the turn of events, in the opening, because my bishop is out. And yeah, this combination here felt a little bit out of order. Now the knight on c3 is not doing much because this isn't even a threat. But my opponent still played knight b5, which is a pretty bad move, not gonna lie. And during the game I was like, what is this guy doing? Just rook c8, and yeah, this was just a waste of tempo, literally. And it just helped me develop the rook to the place where it belongs on the semi-open c-file. So yeah, not the greatest start by my opponent. Definitely the opening wasn't well played by him, but it's fine. He goes c3 here, which is also weird because now after a6 he has to move the knight back to a3, and here I just played e6, pretty simple. And yeah, it's very weird because my opponent wasted 2 tempi with the knight going to b5 and then a3, and now yeah, he probably has to go back to c2 or to b1. This knight has no future here on a3. So yeah, during the game I thought that I was already way better, which yeah, I don't really understand sometimes chess, because even though my opponent just wasted all that time with the knight, the computer only gives a slight edge to black. Yeah, I thought that if you just waste like 2 tempi like this, you would be way worse, but apparently this is not that big of a deal for white. It's just black is slightly better, like minus 0.4 on my engine, so yeah, nothing special. But still, very nice outcome for me, playing the black pieces for sure. Here my opponent played knight b1, so yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, I don't know. My opponent went like knight c3, knight b5, knight a3, knight b1. It's just, it almost feels like he's trolling. Here I play bishop d6, which, yeah, the computer doesn't like that much. The computer wants something crazy like g5. Yeah, I don't see myself playing g5 like this. Yeah, it just feels weird to play such an aggressive move with the king in the center, but yeah, the computer is not afraid. Also, the computer also points out f6 with the idea of going king f7 g5, which is actually a setup that I recently found and I've been studying, which might be a good solution to play against the ultra solid London and to try to create some problems for white players. But yeah, after knight b1 I just played bishop d6. We traded bishops and he played knight f3, I played knight f6. Here my opponent immediately went knight h4, going after my bishop on f5. I dropped the bishop back, which might be a slight mistake. Maybe bishop g4 would have been more challenging for sure, because now is my opponent gonna play bishop e2 and just trade pieces like this. I mean, maybe actually here this would already be uh, a very big mistake, because I have queen f4, double attack on the knight, and also threatening queen c1. So here actually the only move is knight f3, but then I get queen c1 check, and queen d1, queen takes b2, I would be winning here. So yeah, actually bishop g4 would have been better, because it would pose more questions for white instead of just dropping back to g6. Yeah, this was a small detail that actually could have made a difference, because here like bishop g4, bishop e2 doesn't work well, because my opponent can't take with the queen. If he takes with the king is also super bad, of course. I don't have to explain that to you guys. f3, oh sorry, f3, definitely the best move here according to the engine, but this is not very comfortable for white to create a weakness around the king side. So yeah, actually this would have been a better option. I was also looking at queen b3 here, but this doesn't seem to work, because I have the beautiful knight takes d4, which, wow, it's just amazing. My opponent can't take here because of rook c1 check, and yeah, it's just disaster. Let me just show you guys. Rook c1 check, king d2, it's really the only move, and now queen c7, and white is bust. So yeah, actually I had a lot of tricks here. And yeah, I mean, if knight takes d4, queen takes b7, this is also just completely losing. After queen e5 check, my opponent is gonna get mated soon, and yeah, this would end the game pretty quickly. So yeah, bishop g4 actually has a lot of venom, and I missed this chance of posing problems to my opponent. But yeah, small detail, but makes it all a whole lot of difference. So okay, going back to the game, bishop g6 by me. Here my opponent just played bishop e2, which wouldn't have worked previously, but now it works. I castle, my opponent castles, and we reach just an equal position where I missed some chances to get an advantage, and it is what it is. I mean, if you don't punish your opponent for wasting tempos, like, it doesn't matter. But here, I don't know, I was still thinking about how badly my opponent played the opening, and I still thought that I had an advantage. Yeah, I was very delusional in this game, not gonna lie. I was like, I just have to attack him. He's just down so many tempos. His knight is still on b1, like this pawn is blocking the knight and stuff like that. I thought, okay, let's just attack, and I played e5, which, it's not an horrible move, but it's kind of a risky move, not gonna lie. But yeah, this position is already hard to make something happen with black, because what do you do in this position? b5 is not a good move in my opinion, because of a4, and now my opponent is activating the rook, putting pressure on these pawns. If I push, this pawn is hanging. If I take here, he just develops the queen or the rook. So yeah, this is not ideal. d5, which, yeah, it's risky, but at least it's active, doing the pawn break in the center. My opponent took the bishop, h takes g6, d takes on e5, knight takes on e5, and now we reach a position where my opponent still has the light square bishop. I have an isolated pawn on d5, and yeah, I mean, he has the better structure for sure. He has one bishop, which is important for him, and I have this weak pawn, but I have more activity. Yeah, it's actually an interesting position with chances for both sides for sure. My opponent played knight a3, developing his knight, and here I played rook d8. My opponent played knight c2, which actually was a very good maneuver. Knight a3 to c2 was good, because now he's threatening to just blockade the pawn with knight d4, which would be very good for him, because that's what you should do against an isolated pawn. You should blockade it first. Here I played queen b6, which it's a tricky move. I think this is a nice move because it attacks the b2 pawn and also kind of pins this pawn from moving with this x-ray. Sorry, that error was horrible. With this x-ray, so this pawn is pinned, and yeah, there might be some tricks in the future with knight e4 maybe. But okay, queen b6 also had a little trick in mind. So after rook b1, my idea was here to play d4. I think I rushed with this move for sure. I don't think I spent a lot of time making sure that this move worked. This move was already with ideas of equalizing the position, because I started thinking that the position was actually dangerous for black with knight d4 coming. So I really thought that I had to break with d4 as soon as possible before my opponent was able to just put the knight on d4. But this d4 move doesn't really work that well. Yeah, my idea with this move was twofold. If my opponent took with the pawn, I would have knight c6, completely equalizing, because now my opponent can't really defend this pawn. Yeah, I have 3 attackers, and my opponent has 2 defenders, and he can't really have another defender right now. So yeah, this would equalize immediately. And I also thought that after knight d4, my opponent was gonna drop the pawn with knight c6, with the idea that this the knight is pinned to the queen. But in calculation, of course, I missed queen b3, right? I missed queen b3, and now I am screwed. This idea with d4 doesn't work because he's threatening to exchange queens. I don't have time to take the knight because my queen would be hanging. If I take the queen, he takes back with the knight, and he's just a clear pawn up in the game, thankfully. After d4, knight takes d4, I realized that, okay, I messed up. Let's see what I can do to fix this problem, if there's even anything. And after calculating for like 30 minutes, I actually spent a long time calculating here, I decided to play knight e4. So I just, that was just a pawn sacrifice, almost by accident. I didn't meant to do it, but I ended up playing knight e4, which is an active move going forward with the knight. And in the future, maybe knight d2 can be annoying for my opponent to deal with. So yeah, I ended up playing knight e4, but I realized that I screwed up, and my opponent is just a clear pawn up. I have a little bit of activity to compensate, but is it enough? I don't know. Yeah, I definitely screwed up this game big time in just a couple of moves. So yeah, my opponent played bad the opening, and I played the middle game horribly. So okay, it is what it is, That's why openings don't matter that much, So okay, knight e4, and my opponent played queen b3. Here I just traded queens, and I played knight d2. So yeah, knight d2, quite a forcing move, because I'm attacking both rooks. So my opponent has to take the knight, I take with the rook, and now okay, I have some activity. At least I'm down a pawn, and I'm probably worse, definitely worse, but my rook is active at least on the second rank here, so maybe I have compensation here. Now we were starting to get low on the clock. My opponent spent a long time in the opening. Also, I think he probably arrived a bit late to the game, and he spent a long time in the opening. I started spending a long time on the middle game, and we reached this position with I think like maybe 15 minutes for both sides, something like that, which in a classical game is already kind of low on time. You're already low on time. But yeah, here my opponent just defended the bishop with rook e1, fe1, and here I was trying to figure out what was the best way to move forward and to make the position as tricky as possible. and I ended up finding a very, very tricky move. I want you guys to pause the video and try to find what is the trickiest move that black can make here. Pause the video, write in the comments below what would you play as black to make your opponent fall into a trap. Try to find a trap that you can make your opponent fall into. 85% of you guys that watch my videos aren't subscribed. If you enjoyed the videos, I would highly appreciate if you could hit that subscribe button. Let's get back into the video. So yeah, the move here that is the most tricky is not the best move, but here you're already like worse. I don't think you're really trying to find the best move. You're trying to find the trickiest move to trick your opponent, and that's something that I learned from a book that I'm still currently reading, which I already mentioned, but I'll mention it again, and I'll just put a image here of the book if you want to get it. It's the Chess Swindler, which, you know, explains how to swindle, the mentality when you're trying to swindle your opponent, tactics and things to look out for to turn the game around, which is something very nice and unusual. So yeah, here finally I'm gonna tell you guys the move. The move is Rook CD8. It's a very, very tricky move, which, you know, has a very, very disgusting trap here. So here as white, you have a couple of options. You can fall into the trap, or you can just play it well and not fall into the trap. Here, the trap that my opponent fell into during the game, and I prepared with this move Rook D8, was Bishop takes on A6. This looks like you just win a second pawn, and it feels like you tricked black as white, but it's not that simple. Of course, my knight is undefended, so he just sacrificed the bishop. And after b takes on a6, which I played in the game, he takes the knight here on e5, and it just looks okay. Like, white is just 2 pawns up, completely winning. And yeah, it's gonna be an easy win for white now in the rook endgame. But my opponent missed something that I was planning with this, which is the stunning and quite brilliant move Rook takes on b2, sacrificing the rook, and if my opponent takes the rook, he gets checkmated, and I'm attacking the rook at the same time, so, and also threatening to take this pawn. So yeah, this is actually quite a sick move, and just forces a liquidation, which ends up in a draw. I mean, here my opponent played rook f1, and now I just took this pawn. So yeah, let's go back a little bit. Here I have to mention that rook takes b2 is really the best move here, because like rook d1 check might look like you're actually checkmating your opponent and winning, but it's not like that, because my opponent can go back to e1, and now I don't have any tricks. And okay, if my opponent after rook takes on b2 goes back to e1, at least I can take this pawn, and I got my 2 pawns back, and this is just equal. So yeah, going back here, what could my opponent do to not fall into the trap? It was actually pretty simple. My opponent could just ignore this tactic, this like fake tactic, and just play rook rook ed1. Actually, it's important, rook ed1, because this bishop is hanging, but the rook is also, if I take here, my opponent takes here, and he's just winning. So yeah, this is the most accurate move, and now, you know, I'm kind of forced to do something about this tension. Maybe I can ignore, but with like moves like f6 or something like that, but my opponent can bring the king and start trading pieces, and he will just be up a clear pawn in the endgame and be winning. And yeah, I mean, this would also be good enough, but the other rook is more accurate, because here my opponent can't bring the king closer here to e1. So in the other variation, my opponent can bring the king here, which is better. But yeah, that was the way to play for white. But it's very easy to miss this trap, and my opponent missed the trap, which made me smile a lot and be very happy. And yeah, my opponent was like, when I played rook takes on b2, he was like shocked. And yeah, I saved the game like this because now, as I said, we reached this position which is pretty much equal, and we just traded a bunch. We traded both passed pawns, and yeah, I traded the one pair of rooks, and now it's just simple. I mean, there's no way to really make progress for both sides, and we just agreed on a draw. And yeah, it was a pretty fascinating game with huge mistakes for both sides and a lot of missed chances, missed opportunities, and tactics and stuff like that. Actually, a pretty good game, but yeah, I have to really work on just my middle games and also my tactics, because the openings I do well, but there's a lot to play after the openings, and I kind of neglected it a lot in 2023. I mainly focused on some end game technique, improving that, and also just improving my openings. But I'm kind of lacking a lot in middle games and tactics for sure. I still miss a lot of ideas. But 2024, we are working to improve on those two aspects a lot, tactics and middle games mainly. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye bye.